What would you do if the one person who used to be your closest ally suddenly became the one person you could never trust again? What would you do if the brother who once stood beside you through every royal storm was now the one slamming every door in your face? Especially on the one day that symbolizes unity, forgiveness, and family more than any other day on the royal calendar. And more importantly, what would you do if the entire world was watching your humiliation unfold in real time? Because that, right there, is exactly what happened to Prince Harry. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. This wasn't a quiet disagreement behind palace walls. It wasn't a private phone call gone wrong. It wasn't a subtle hint or a polite refusal. It was a blunt, cold, unfiltered shutdown. A shutdown delivered by Prince William himself, the next King of England. In a moment that could define the future of the monarchy and the future of the two brothers who once thought nothing could ever tear them apart. And you're about to hear every piece of it. But before we dive in, ask yourself this. Why would Prince William choose Christmas Day, of all days, to draw the firmest line he has ever drawn in his life? Why would he refuse Harry the simple act of standing beside the family on the Buckingham Palace balcony? Something so symbolic, so emotional, and so easily framed as an olive branch. Is it really about protocol? Or punishment? Or something far more explosive than anyone realizes? Because from the outside, it looks like a simple no. But from the inside, it's a complete unraveling and a warning shot. Let's rewind for 1 second. For years, the palace balcony has symbolized everything the royals want the world to believe about them. Unity, continuity, stability, and a carefully curated image of harmony. Especially on Christmas Day, the crowds gather, cameras flash, choirs sing, the king appears, the family stands shoulder to shoulder. And for a brief moment, everything feels like the country is part of something bigger, something older, something unbroken. That balcony is not just stone and railings. It is a stage, the highest stakes PR stage on earth. So when Prince Harry asked William for permission, yes, permission, because William is the one orchestrating every detail of the Christmas Day visual narrative. He wasn't asking for a family moment. He was asking for something that would redefine the public perception of the feud, the monarchy, and the direction of the royal family heading into the new year. And William knew it. He knew exactly what Harry wanted. He knew why he wanted it. And he knew what would happen if he said yes. So he didn't. He shut it down. Instantly. Sharply. Decisively. But here's where the story gets interesting, and where things shift from cold denial into something much deeper, much more personal. Because the way William rejected Harry wasn't passive or procedural. It wasn't diplomatic. It wasn't softened. It wasn't even delivered with the usual royal restraint. Instead, it was delivered with a level of finality that insiders describe as beyond repair. Why? Why now? Why at Christmas? Why with such force? That is what we're about to explore. But first, let's paint the picture of how desperate Harry truly was before making that plea. Imagine this. You've burned almost every bridge you once had. You've criticized the institution that raised you. You've exposed family secrets in your memoir. You've stepped outside the royal circle entirely. And yet, a part of you still wants, still needs, to be seen with your family on one of the most publicly scrutinized days of the year. Because Harry understands optics. He understands perception. He understands redemption arcs. He knows exactly how the world would interpret him standing beside the king and the future king on the balcony. As a signal that peace was returning. As a sign the wounds were healing. As evidence that the royals were reintegrating him into the inner circle. You cannot underestimate how powerful that would be. But Prince William saw right through it. And the way he responded. The tone, the speed, the anger, reveals far more than the simple fact that he said no. It reveals the deeper wounds, the accumulated resentment, the strategic concerns, and the emotional fractures that have pushed these brothers so far apart they might as well be living on separate continents even when they're both in the same country. But here's the part nobody expected. William didn't just reject Harry. He rejected the idea of Harry being seen with the family at all. Because William didn't want a photo op reunion. He didn't want a scripted hug. He didn't want a forced smile. He wanted something else entirely, something Harry didn't anticipate. And that is what makes this whole situation so fascinating. Because on one side, you have Harry desperately hoping for a symbolic gesture that could shift global opinion, soften the public narrative, and perhaps even restore a sliver of the royal identity he once shed. On the other side, you have William carefully constructing an image of strength, stability, and future leadership. And in that image, he cannot risk being overshadowed or undermined by a brother who has repeatedly destabilized the monarchy's public reputation. This isn't just a family feud. This is a battle between two future narratives. One is about reconciliation. The other is about control. One is about emotion. The other is about image. One is about brotherhood. The other is about monarchy. And whether you agree with him or not, William has chosen the latter, at least for now. But what makes this situation emotionally devastating is that Harry didn't just ask William nicely. He didn't float the idea casually. He wasn't half-hearted. He wasn't probing. He pleaded. Insiders describe his message as emotional, unexpected, and softer than usual, almost like he was trying to speak not as a duke, not as a public figure, but as a younger brother yearning for something familiar, something warm, something he hasn't had in years. Was it vulnerability? Desperation? Strategy? Maybe all three. And yet, William's reaction was the opposite. Not emotional, not warm, not confused. Cold, direct, final, unmovable. So what did he say? What words were so sharp that they left people inside both Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace stunned? What exactly made staff whisper, "This is it. This is the end"? Not yet. We're not revealing that line just yet. Because to understand the weight of William's refusal, you need to understand the pressures surrounding him in the weeks leading up to Christmas Day. The meetings, the advisors, the planning sessions, the conversations with Kate, the tension around Charles's health, the fragile public image of the monarchy, the press strategy, the recalculations after every poll, every headline, every unexpected twist. William isn't just making decisions as a brother anymore. He's making decisions as an heir, a role that requires him to think in terms of decades, not days. If Harry were to stand beside him on the balcony, even for a few minutes, that moment would be photographed, clipped, broadcast, analyzed, and replayed for the next 10 years. It would become a symbol bigger than the event itself. It could undermine months of carefully curated narratives. It could completely reshape how the world views the two brothers' relationship. And William cannot risk that. Not now. Not during the most critical transition period of the monarchy in decades. Not when every decision he makes is scrutinized as a preview of his future leadership. Not when the public is watching Charles's health so closely. Not when the royal family is preparing for what insiders call the next era. William is playing chess. Harry is playing emotion. And those two approaches simply do not align. But the twist, the one that nobody expected, is that William actually does want a reunion. He is planning one. He is thinking about healing the family. Just not with Harry. Not yet. Not on Harry's terms. Not on a balcony. Not on Christmas Day. And certainly not in a way that benefits Harry more than it benefits the monarchy. And this is where the emotional contradiction sits like a stone between them. William wants unity. Harry wants visibility. William wants control. Harry wants reconnection. William wants long-term strategy. Harry wants immediate symbolism. Two brothers. Two agendas. One balcony. And only one of them can win. So when the moment finally came, when Harry's plea reached William, the reaction wasn't merely a refusal. It was a message about boundaries, a message about consequence, a message about power, but most importantly, a message about who gets to define the future of the royal family. And what William said, the actual sentence, the one that shattered Harry, is coming in the next chapter. Because the Real story begins when William picks up his phone, reads Harry's request, looks at Kate, looks at the staff around him, and delivers a line that will echo through royal history. But what he said wasn't just a rejection. It was something far more brutal. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What would you do if the message you sent in a moment of raw vulnerability was met not with compassion, not with curiosity, but with a silence so sharp it felt like a slap? Because that is exactly where we pick up, right at the moment when Prince William finally opened Harry's plea. And the question that will haunt this entire chapter is simple. Why did William react the way he did? Why did he not hesitate? Why was his rejection so brutally fast, So unapologetically final, so shockingly cold. Let's begin where everything truly shifted. Harry had poured out a message that insiders described as unexpectedly emotional. It wasn't PR polished. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't defensive, angry, or sarcastic, the tones he has been known for in recent years. Instead, it sounded like a man who, for the first time in a very long time, realized that he had something to lose. Maybe even someone. He wrote from desperation, from longing, from a sense of homesickness he'd never admit publicly. A craving for belonging. A craving for the feeling of standing next to his family and pretending, even if only for 10 minutes, that the world was not fractured, that the wounds were not fresh, that the divisions were not so deep they could swallow the monarchy whole. That was the subtext of his plea. But William didn't read it that way. He didn't see an olive branch. He didn't see vulnerability. He didn't see nostalgia. He saw strategy. He saw manipulation. He saw a real risk to the monarchy. And the moment William looked at the message, a strange, almost eerie calm washed over him. The kind of calm a person feels when they've already decided something long before the request ever arrives. Because let's be honest, William knew this day was coming. He knew Harry would eventually make a move, especially on a symbolic occasion like Christmas Day. He also knew that Harry, with the help of Meghan's Hollywood advisors, understood the immense power of a balcony photograph, the optics of reconciliation, the headlines of unity, the global narrative turning. One pose, one wave, one smile. That's all it would take to overshadow months of royal PR work. So ask yourself, if you were William, and you had spent the last year rebuilding trust with the British public, repositioning the monarchy, supporting a father with uncertain health, shielding your own wife through personal challenges, and bearing the weight of the future crown, would you risk it all on a single symbolic moment that could be spun however Harry wanted? That's exactly what was going through William's mind. But the people in the room that day, senior aides, a communications advisor, and one close family confidant, described something even more telling. They said William didn't just read the message. He studied it. He ran his thumb slowly across the screen as if he were trying to extract something hidden. And then he looked up with an expression so cold it instantly changed the atmosphere in the room. He understood the stakes. He understood the timing. He understood the psychology. But most importantly, he understood Harry. He knew this wasn't a family gesture. It was a public move, designed to reset the narrative. William took a breath, long and steady. He shifted his weight. He narrowed his eyes. And then he muttered something under his breath that one aide claims they will never forget. He thinks he can walk back in like nothing happened. That sentence alone reveals everything. Because in William's mind, Harry wasn't coming with humility. He wasn't apologizing. He wasn't acknowledging the damage he caused. He was skipping steps. He was jumping ahead. He wanted the reward, the visual forgiveness, without earning the relationship behind it. And William wasn't going to allow that. But here's where the emotional contradiction twists the knife deeper. William misses his brother. He really does. Behind closed doors, he has admitted it more than once. He has spoken about childhood memories. He has reminisced about their early 20s. He has shared old jokes. He has told trusted insiders that he wishes things had played out differently. So why, if there is still a small place in him that remembers the brother he once laughed with, would he unleash such a blunt, unforgiving rejection? Because William is no longer just Harry's brother. He is the heir to the throne. Every decision he makes now is seen through a global lens, through the weight of constitutional tradition, through the expectation that he must always choose the monarchy first, even if, behind the scenes, it breaks his heart. And if there's one rule the monarchy has always been crystal clear about, it is this. Optics can save you. Optics can destroy you. And Harry's presence on that balcony? That was nuclear optics. Powerful enough to dissolve months of careful palace messaging. Powerful enough to blur the line between exile and acceptance. Powerful enough to ignite a frenzy of press speculation and rewrite the narrative of the feud in ways the palace couldn't control. William wasn't just rejecting Harry. He was protecting the monarchy. But that doesn't make the next part any less brutal. Let's go back to the room. William is still holding Harry's message. Everyone around him is silent. No one wants to move. No one wants to breathe too loudly. They can sense something tectonic shifting in him. It's as if the years of tension, Interviews, accusations, betrayals, and private emotional wounds condense into one moment. One moment where William has to decide whether to open the door slightly or slam it shut entirely. And then he speaks. What does he expect? That he can show up and be forgiven in front of the cameras? He doesn't say it with anger. He doesn't say it with bitterness. He says it with exhaustion and a resolve that instantly chills the room. Because this time, William is not wavering. But then comes the most chilling part of all. An aide, cautiously, nervously, asks, "Do you want to respond later? After you've had time to think?" William doesn't blink. He doesn't soften. He doesn't hesitate. No, respond now. And then he delivers the line. The line that insiders say stopped the room cold. The line that shattered any remaining hope Harry had for a Christmas Day reunion. The line that will go down as one of the most defining statements of their fractured relationship. But before we reveal what he said, you need to understand one more piece of the puzzle. The piece that explains why William reacted with such swift finality. Because in the weeks leading up to this Christmas, William had been quietly building something. Something big. Something calculated. Something meant to protect the monarchy's image during one of the most delicate periods in recent royal history. A reunion was coming, yes. But not with Harry. Not with Meghan. Not with a Netflix camera crew watching from the shadows. William's planned reunion involved other royals. Other figures who could help reshape the monarchy's image. Other alliances that the public wasn't expecting. And Harry's presence? That would have destroyed the strategy before it even began. Which means this wasn't just a refusal. It was a strategic firewall. But the rawest, most devastating moment is still coming. William lifts his phone. He begins crafting the reply. His fingers move with chilling precision. His expression doesn't soften. He doesn't look around the room for approval. He doesn't second-guess himself. He writes 4 words, just 4, that strike like lightning. But not yet. We're building to that. Because before sending that message, William pauses. Not to reconsider. Not to question. Not to show mercy. He pauses because someone enters the room. It's Kate. And her entrance changes the temperature instantly. She looks at William. Then at the phone in his hand. Then at the staff members whose eyes reveal that something serious is underway. Kate asks a simple question. Is it from him? Everyone knows who him is. No one needs clarification. William nods. Kate steps closer. She doesn't speak right away. She just studies William's face with the kind of understanding that only decades of shared history can create. And in that moment, she can see everything. The frustration, the disappointment, the sadness, the obligation, the weight of duty. She places a hand on his arm, and in a soft, steady voice, she says, "Do what you need to do." Those 6 words are the permission, the validation, and the emotional anchor William needed in that moment. He turns back to the phone. He finishes typing. And the message, those 4 devastating words, is finally sent. But what did he say? We'll reveal it next. Because what came after that message didn't just escalate the feud. It detonated it. And no one saw what Harry did next. What do you do when the message you've been waiting for finally arrives, and it feels like a punch straight to the chest? What do you do when the reply is not a paragraph, not a compromise, not a softened attempt at diplomacy, but 4 words that feel like a door slamming, a bridge burning, and a warning being carved into stone all at once? Because when Prince Harry read William's response, that's exactly what he felt. 4 words. Just 4. But before we get to Harry opening the message, before we explore his reaction, before we reveal how those 4 words sent shockwaves across 2 continents, let's return to the second the message left William's phone. It happened fast, silent, unceremonious, without regret. William pressed send. The phone made a soft click. And that was it. 6 years of anger. 4 years of interviews. 3 years of memoir excerpts. Dozens of staff resignations. Endless accusations. All of it crystallized into one single decision. Kate watched him, her face unreadable, not cold, not cruel, but filled with a quiet understanding that only someone who has lived through the same emotional war could carry. Because Kate has been dragged into this feud just as deeply as William. She has endured the headlines, the interviews, the rumors, the narratives, the pointed jabs in Harry's book. She has remained silent, poised, loyal, but not untouched. So when William sent that message, Kate didn't stop him. She didn't question him. She didn't tell him to soften it. She simply nodded before leaving the room, because she knew this wasn't a decision about petty revenge or brotherly spite. This was a decision about survival. Survival of the monarchy. Survival of a public image William has been forced to protect. Survival of the disciplined future he must embody. But now we shift to the other side, to Montecito. To the moment the notification buzzed on Harry's phone. To the living flame of hope inside him flickering for the last time. Can you imagine the tension that must have existed in that room? The air hanging thick with anticipation? The mix of fear and hope clashing in Harry's chest? Because Harry thought he had done the right thing. For once, he thought approaching William privately was the mature path. He thought Christmas would soften the edges. He thought time would mellow the wounds. He thought William would understand, even if only a little. But the truth was that Harry misread the distance between them. He thought it was a crack. It was a canyon. Let's slow down and picture the moment. Harry is sitting in the kitchen, a sleek, expansive space straight out of a California design magazine. Morning light spills across marble countertops. A cup of untouched coffee sits beside him. He's staring at his phone, waiting, refreshing, breathing unevenly. Then the screen lights up. William's name flashes. And for a split second, one tiny, fragile heartbeat, hope floods his face. He taps the message. He reads the 4 words. And his entire expression collapses. What were the words? Not yet. Stay with me. Because Harry didn't just read those words. He felt them. They pierced him. They deflated him. They enraged him. They humiliated him. And more importantly, they confirmed something he has feared for a long time. William is no longer his brother first. He is the heir first. Harry sat there, staring at the message, and for a moment the world around him blurred. The room, the coffee, the California sunshine, the airplane model on the shelf, the polished floors, all of it faded as the words burned into his mind. This wasn't just a refusal. It was a declaration. A declaration that William was done pretending, done negotiating, done absorbing blow after blow. Harry blinked, swallowed, read the message again, and that's when the emotion hit. Not anger at first, not frustration, hurt, deep, stinging, humiliating hurt. For years, Harry convinced himself that the feud was complicated, multi-layered, maybe even fixable. He believed that if he could just get William one-on-one, strip the titles, strip the roles, strip the cameras, strip the history, the brother he once played with as a child might reappear. But William's message shattered that illusion instantly, because those 4 words didn't sound like a brother. They sounded like a monarch in training, a man who had already placed Harry in a box labeled dangerous and sealed it shut. Harry's first reaction was disbelief. His second was shame. His third, fury. A storm broke inside him, one that had been brewing for months, maybe years. The interviews, the memoir, the documentaries, the constant commentary had all been efforts to be heard, to be seen, to be respected, to force the institution to acknowledge him. But now? For words told him he had lost. And the contradiction is devastating. Harry wanted family. William wanted protection. Harry wanted connection. William wanted distance. And neither man could see the world through the other's eyes. Harry gripped his phone and stood up abruptly. His chair screeched against the hardwood. He began pacing. Fast, erratic, running a hand through his hair, breathing heavily. Then Megan entered the room. She saw his expression. She saw the phone in his hand. She saw the fear behind the anger. She asked the question she already knew the answer to. It didn't go well, did it? Harry didn't speak. He just handed her the phone. Megan read the message. Her reaction? Not surprise. Not shock. Not confusion. She closed her eyes for a moment. Slowly. Deliberately. As if confirming something she had predicted months ago. She handed the phone back without a word. Because Megan understood something Harry still struggled with. William's refusal wasn't emotional. It was strategic. But Megan's silence only fueled the fire inside Harry. He felt cornered. Dismissed. Reduced to a problem instead of a person. So what were the 4 words William sent? They were simple, cold, surgical. Not happening. Not now. For words that carried 100 meanings. Not happening because you betrayed us. Not happening because the monarchy can't risk it. Not happening because your presence is destabilizing. Not happening because trust is gone. Not happening because I'm the one protecting this family now. Not now, and maybe not ever. Harry read the words again, and the humiliation spread like heat under his skin. Something inside him snapped, quietly, internally, but snapped nonetheless. And here's where the twist comes in. Because what Harry did next wasn't rational. It wasn't strategic. And it certainly wasn't part of any PR plan. It was emotional, impulsive, raw, and it blindsided everyone, including Meghan. Harry grabbed his phone, opened a new message, and began typing something he knew would escalate the feud beyond anything William expected. But before he could finish, his phone buzzed again. A second message from William, one that was even colder, even sharper, even more final. And Harry froze when he read it. What did William send? That's the next piece of the story. Because the second message didn't just reject Harry. It declared something far more brutal. A limit. And what came next would ignite a reaction that no one, not even the palace, was prepared for. But before we get to that second message, we need to explore the one person who saw this coming before anyone else. Kate. Because Kate's private conversation with William, just hours before the message was sent, holds the key to understanding why he drew the harshest line of his life. And her warning? It was chillingly accurate. But what did she tell him? We're about to reveal it. And trust me, no one saw it coming. What if the real turning point in this entire royal meltdown wasn't Harry's plea, and wasn't even William's brutal message, but a single quiet warning whispered by Kate behind closed doors? What if the person who saw the danger coming first wasn't an advisor, a communications expert, or even King Charles, but the Princess of Wales, whose instinct for people, motives, and optics is sharper than most political strategists in the country? Because before William ever typed those 4 devastating words, before he ever pressed send, and before he ever doubled down with an even colder second message, Kate had already predicted the fallout. And what she told William was not gentle. It was not comforting. It was not optimistic. It was a warning that now feels eerily prophetic. But before we reveal Kate's words, before we show how she positioned the entire feud through a single sentence, we need to go back. Back to the moment she entered the room in Chapter 1. Because something subtle happened in that moment that most people never noticed, but every eyewitness remembered. When Kate walked in and saw the phone in William's hand, she didn't rush. She didn't panic. She didn't jump to conclusions. She simply paused, studying the situation, reading the room with that calm, almost serene composure that has made her one of the most influential royal figures of her generation. She didn't ask for details. She didn't need to. She already knew. Because Kate, more than anyone, has watched the emotional cost this feud has placed on William. She has seen the sleepless nights. She has seen his stress during briefings. She has seen him holding the monarchy together while the media hunts for cracks. And she has seen him trying to protect their children from the storm raging between the two brothers. So when she entered that room, she walked in not as a princess, but as a partner who knew that something was about to break. And it had everything to do with Harry. But here's the part no one talks about. Kate had sensed this moment coming long before William even received the message. Weeks earlier, during a private evening conversation, she told him something that chilled him. A sentence so blunt, so emotionally heavy, that William reportedly sat in silence afterward, realizing how right she was. Kate had seen a pattern developing. A dangerous one. A predictable one. One Harry might not even be fully aware he was executing. But she saw it. And she knew eventually Harry would cross a line. Let's rewind the clock a bit, to that evening in question. The children were asleep. The castle corridors were quiet. Soft winter light glowed against the windows. The kind of quiet where difficult truths can finally breathe. Kate and William were sitting together, not as public figures, not as future monarchs, not as symbols of stability, but as a married couple wrestling with the pain of a family divided. Kate put her tea down. She turned to William, and she said a sentence that would later prove to be the key to the entire Christmas Day disaster. Harry isn't coming back for the family. He's coming back for the image. William froze. Because deep down, he knew she was right. Ask yourself this, and answer honestly. If Harry truly wanted reconciliation, why didn't he begin with private healing? Why choose the most visible moment of the year? Why push for a balcony appearance before a single private conversation had taken place? Why choose a symbol before choosing the relationship? Kate saw right through it. She saw through the hope. She saw through the emotional longing. She saw through the romanticism William occasionally slipped into when remembering the old days. Harry wasn't asking for a brother. He was asking for a platform. And Kate, who has become a master strategist in her own right, knew that falling for it would damage the monarchy more than any headline Harry had ever given. So when Harry's request finally came, Kate didn't need to process it. She didn't need to weigh it. She didn't need time. She already knew what her answer would be. And William, by extension, knew what his had to be. But here's the deeper layer nobody expected. Kate's warning didn't just come from a place of political analysis. It came from emotional scars. Because Kate remembers 2018. She remembers the bridesmaid dress incident, not the tabloidy version, but the real emotional weight of it. She remembers how quickly private tensions became public ammunition. She remembers how Meghan misinterpreted, Harry defended, and she remained silent while being painted in the press as the villain. She remembers Harry not defending her then. She remembers the interviews. She remembers the memoir passages. She remembers being dragged into drama she never contributed to. So yes, Kate has forgiven a lot, but she hasn't forgotten. And she wasn't about to allow the monarchy, or her husband, to be manipulated through symbolism. Because that balcony wasn't just a family moment. It was a message, a global one. And Kate understands messaging better than most politicians. But we return now to William's second message, the one Harry received right after the first gut punch. The one that came buzzing through Harry's phone like a second wave crashing over an already drowning man. Harry was pacing, his chest tight, his jaw clenched, his eyes flicking between disbelief and fury. Meghan watched silently, analyzing, interpreting, waiting for the next piece to drop. Then the phone buzzed again. Harry froze. He turned slowly, staring at the device as if it were a live grenade. Meghan stepped closer. His thumb hovered, and then he opened the message. But before we reveal what those words were, before we expose the phase of the feud that no member of the public has ever seen painted this bluntly, you need to understand something critical. The second message wasn't impulsive. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't even written quickly. William crafted it. Every word, every comma, every ounce of tone, because the second message was a line in the sand, a boundary, a declaration of authority, a signal to Harry, to Meghan, to the palace, to the advisors, and perhaps even to the king himself. It was William asserting one thing. I am the future monarch. You cannot use me. But while William wrote it as strategy, Harry read it as betrayal. Let's go back into the kitchen in Montecito. The California morning light, now feeling far too bright, too warm, too out of sync with the storm gathering inside Harry. He opens the second message. His eyes widen, then narrow into something dark. Darker than the reaction to the first message. Because the second message didn't say no. It said enough. Harry read the words once. Then again. Then again. His expression hardened. The emotional hurt transformed into something sharper. Not sadness. Not humiliation. Resolve. A dangerous one. Because the second message said, you need to stop this. And those 5 words, simple, sharp, final, hit Harry in the deepest part of his identity. For years, Harry has been told what to do. Told when to appear. Told how to behave. Told what to say. Told where to stand. Told what his place was. And his entire rebellion, Oprah, the book, the interviews, the LA lifestyle, was born out of one desire. To never be told what to do again. So when William, the brother who once let Harry follow him everywhere, said the words, you need to stop this, Harry didn't hear concern. He didn't hear frustration. He didn't hear boundaries. He heard domination. He heard dismissal. He heard control. He heard contempt. Harry looked at Meghan. Something shifted in his face, something she had been afraid of, something she had tried to prevent, something that had been building brick by brick. He said just one sentence. He thinks he can silence me. Meghan stepped back slightly, because she knew where that sentence led. She knew what Harry was capable of when he felt cornered. She knew how quickly emotion could turn into escalation. But before she could respond, before she could calm him, Harry made a decision. A decision that would escalate everything. A decision that would have consequences far beyond Christmas Day. A decision that William did not expect. Because Harry wasn't going to accept silence. He wasn't going to accept boundaries. He wasn't going to accept being told what to stop. Harry decided, right then, right there, to confront William directly. No advisors. No filters. No diplomacy. And what he did next, it would change everything. Because Harry grabbed his phone, opened a blank message, and began typing something that would turn this feud from a cold war into a firestorm. But what he wrote, that's where the next chapter begins. Because the message Harry sent back wasn't just emotional. It was explosive, and the palace was not prepared for it. What happens when a man who has spent his entire life being told where to stand, how to speak, what to wear, who to smile at, and which emotions he is allowed to feel, suddenly reaches the moment where he simply refuses to be controlled anymore? What happens when years of bottled frustration, humiliation, love, longing, resentment, and identity crisis all collide in one moment? And that moment arrives in the form of a 5-word message from the brother who once meant everything to him. Because that is exactly what happened the second Harry read William's second message. You need to stop this. Those 5 words didn't just sting. They detonated. And for the first time since this feud began, Harry wasn't thinking about optics. He wasn't thinking about documentaries, deals, scandals, palace politics, or public sympathy. He wasn't thinking about his titles or lack of them. He wasn't thinking about the public's perception, the press narrative, or even Meghan standing beside him. He was thinking like a brother who had finally snapped. Let's place you directly inside that moment. Because the atmosphere inside their Montecito kitchen shifted so violently, so abruptly, that even Meghan, who prides herself on reading emotional currents, nearly stepped back when she saw the expression forming on Harry's face. His jaw tightened. His breathing changed. His posture straightened. His eyes, normally warm even in frustration, hardened. And for the first time in a very long time, Harry didn't look wounded. He looked defiant. But before we get to the message Harry typed, the message that would send the palace scrambling, the staff panicking, and William into a level of fury that royal aides say they have never seen from him, let's break down what pushed Harry over the edge. Because this wasn't just about Christmas Day. It wasn't just about a balcony. It wasn't just about 4 words or 5 words or any words William sent. This was about years of build-up, emotional build-up, that had finally reached the point of eruption. Harry has spent years trying to carve out a new identity. He has spent years trying to make his voice louder than the institution that once spoke for him. He has spent years telling the world that he wants freedom, healing, and his own path. But the truth? There is a part of him, a large part, that still wants his brother back. That contradiction is the core of this entire meltdown. And when William's message arrived, it didn't just reject Harry's plea. It rejected the possibility of healing. It rejected the idea of reconciliation. It rejected Harry's hope. Harry saw that message as confirmation of something he had been terrified to admit for years. William was done. And that realization, sharp and devastating, triggered a reaction that would change the trajectory of the feud forever. Harry sat down, his hands shaking only slightly, his thumb hovering above the keyboard. Not hesitant, not unsure, determined. Meghan watched him carefully, her arms folded, her breathing steady, her expression controlled. Meghan is strategic, everyone knows that. She is methodical. She is intentional. She does not react impulsively. But even she could see that this moment was emotional, primal, ancient, rooted in the decades-long dynamic between 2 brothers who were raised more like twin soldiers than siblings. Meghan stepped closer. "Harry," she said softly. "You don't have to respond right now." But Harry didn't look up. Because this wasn't about strategy. This wasn't about PR. This wasn't about interviews, ratings, or narratives. This was about the boy who once followed William everywhere. To school, to polo lessons, to charity events, to royal tours. Finally facing the man William had become. Harry finally spoke, his voice low, trembling with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. "He thinks he can order me around. He thinks he still owns me." And in that sentence lies the rawest, most vulnerable truth Harry has ever admitted, to himself, to Meghan, to the world if he ever dared to speak it publicly. For all his rebellion, for all his independence, for all his interviews, for all his declarations that he has broken free, Harry still feels controlled by the shadow of the royal family, and specifically by William. But what he typed next would destroy the fragile boundary William was trying to build. He opened a new message. He began typing, fast, without hesitation. His words were sharp. They were emotional. They were loaded with years of resentment he had never said directly to William before. He typed, deleted, typed again, deleted again, then typed something that made even Megan's eyes widen. Because Harry didn't write a plea. He didn't write a rebuttal. He didn't write an argument. He wrote a threat. Not a violent one. Not a physical one. But a threat that William would instantly understand. And instantly fear. Harry typed, "If you shut me out publicly, I'll tell the truth privately." Those were the first words. Then came the second blow. "You don't get to control the narrative anymore." And finally, the line that sent shockwaves through the palace. "You push me out, so don't blame me for what comes next." Harry stared at the message. His thumb hovered over the send button. Meghan held her breath. Because this wasn't just a heated reply. This wasn't just frustration. This was Harry threatening to expose private conversations, private conflicts, private failures, to tell the world things only he and William knew. Information only brothers could share. Information only family members could have. Information the monarchy would fight like hell to keep buried. Meghan took a step forward. "Harry, think carefully," she whispered. But Harry didn't answer. Because in his mind, this wasn't about strategy. This wasn't about telling all. This wasn't even about revenge. This was about finally being heard by the one person who had never listened. But before Harry's thumb pressed the screen, before the message was sent, something unexpected happened. Harry's phone buzzed again. A call this time. Not from William. Not from Charles. Not from Kensington Palace. It was a name that made Harry's blood run cold. A name he did not expect. A name he hadn't seen on his phone in a long time. A name that told him William wasn't the only one who knew what was happening right now. Because the call was coming from someone inside Buckingham Palace. Someone high-ranking. Someone who had never, ever phoned Harry directly like this. Harry froze. Meghan inhaled sharply, and the phone kept ringing. Harry slowly turned the screen so Meghan could see the name. Her hand flew to her mouth. Because the caller ID read, Private Secretary, H.M. the King. Charles's top aide. His closest gatekeeper. His most trusted advisor. Calling Harry. Directly. At the exact moment Harry was about to send an explosive message to William. Why? What did he know? What had he heard? What was happening behind palace walls right now? And more importantly, what was he about to say? Because this call wasn't random. This call wasn't accidental. This call wasn't routine. This call was a warning. A warning Harry did not see coming. And what Harry hears next, it will change everything. And force him to make the most difficult decision of his life. What would you do if the one call you never expected, the one call that should never come directly to your personal phone, suddenly appeared at the exact moment you were about to make a mistake you couldn't take back? What would you do if that call wasn't from your brother, wasn't from your father, but from the one person whose entire job is to protect the king's image at all costs? Because that is exactly what happened to Harry. Just seconds before he could send the most explosive message of his life. A message that would have escalated the feud beyond anything the monarchy had ever faced in the modern era. His phone lit up with a call from the king's private secretary. Let's make this clear. Charles's private secretary does not call casually. He does not call emotionally. He does not call to mend family relationships. He does not call to play therapist, mediator, or moral support. He calls only when something is critical, urgent, threatening, potentially catastrophic, which tells you everything. Harry stared at the screen, shocked. Meghan covered her mouth in disbelief. The ringing kept echoing through the kitchen like a warning bell. And the question that would define the moment was this. Would Harry answer? Because answering meant stepping into the world he had tried desperately to escape. The world of palace control, palace spin, palace secrets. But not answering meant sending the message, the nuclear message, without hearing what might be happening behind the scenes. Harry hesitated. For a full 3 seconds. Then 5. Then 7. And then he answered. Not politely. Not cautiously. Not diplomatically. He answered with the voice of a man whose emotions were boiling dangerously close to the surface. What do you want? No greeting. No respect. No easing into it. Just raw anger. There was a pause on the other end. A measured silence. The kind that only someone trained to navigate royal crises could execute. Then the voice came. Calm, steady, alarmingly controlled. Your Royal Highness, we need to speak. Harry's chest tightened at that title. He hadn't asked to be called that. He wasn't expecting it. He wasn't even sure if it was respect, or a reminder. Before he could respond, the voice continued. Do not send any message to the Prince of Wales. Not now. Not today. Harry's eyes widened. How do you even know? But the private secretary cut him off. We know, and we need you to listen carefully. Those 5 words, we know, listen carefully, sent a chill down Harry's spine. Because Harry suddenly realized something terrifying. The palace was watching him. Somehow, some way, in real time. Not illegally, not through hacking, but through something more powerful, information flow. William had clearly alerted Charles. Or staff had. Or someone had overheard something and escalated it. But there was no doubt. Buckingham Palace knew Harry was about to strike back. And they were panicking. Harry swallowed hard. His emotions twisted. Anger, confusion, fear, embarrassment, mistrust. He stepped away from Meghan, pacing toward the window. Why are you calling me? William started this. He humiliated me. Silence on the other end. Then, his message was necessary. Harry froze. Necessary? The private secretary didn't soften it, didn't explain it, didn't cushion it. He simply said, the Prince of Wales made the correct decision. Harry felt something snap inside. Correct? He shut me out of my own family. He's treating me like I'm a threat. The voice replied coolly. At this moment you are. Harry nearly dropped the phone. He turned around sharply, eyes blazing. I am a threat. To what? To who? To William's ego. The private secretary inhaled slowly. The kind of slow inhale that signals someone is about to reveal something heavy, something unstable, something the public should never hear. To the stability of the crown. Harry didn't speak. Couldn't speak. The words hit him like a thunderbolt. To the stability of the crown. That wasn't personal. That wasn't emotional. That wasn't brother to brother. That was the monarchy declaring him dangerous. Harry tried to steady his breathing. What does that mean? He whispered. The reply came gently, almost pitying. Your message to the Prince of Wales would not stay private. Anything you put in writing becomes evidence. Harry felt sick. Evidence. Of what? Evidence of hostility, evidence of intent, evidence that could be interpreted incorrectly. Harry clenched the phone. You're saying I can't speak freely to my own brother? A soft exhale. I'm saying the consequences will not be confined to your brother. Meghan took a step closer, watching Harry carefully. She couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she didn't need to. Harry's expression said everything. The private secretary continued. There are matters unfolding internally. Sensitive matters. Matters you are not yet aware of. Harry stiffened. His mind raced. Was this about Charles's health? Was it about succession planning? Was it about an internal crisis? Harry whispered. Is my father okay? Another silence. Longer. Heavier. Then the private secretary said. His Majesty is stable, but the institution is fragile. Fragile. That word alone was enough to make Harry's stomach twist. Because if the monarchy was fragile, truly fragile, then every move Harry made, every message he sent, every word he published, every interview he gave, carried far more impact, far more danger. Harry lowered his voice. So you're telling me to keep quiet because the monarchy can't handle it? I'm telling you, the private secretary said calmly, that the monarchy cannot survive another public war between the two of you. Not now. Harry closed his eyes. Because deep down, he knew something was off. Something bigger. Something hidden. He asked quietly, what aren't you telling me? The private secretary hesitated, then finally said, there are developments regarding the king's long-term engagements. And the Prince of Wales must maintain absolute public authority during this period. Harry's pulse quickened. Long-term engagements. Authority. Transition. Was the palace preparing for something? Something big? Something the public didn't know yet? Harry whispered. Is there a transition plan starting? There was no answer to that. Instead, the private secretary said, you must not escalate this situation. Not today. Not in writing. I'm calling you because His Majesty is aware of the message exchange. Harry nearly dropped the phone. Charles knew. Charles had been told. Charles was watching. Harry felt heat rush to his face. So he agrees with William? They're shutting me out together. No, the secretary said softly. His Majesty asked me to call because he does not want you to destroy your relationship permanently. Harry's breath caught. His father wasn't siding with William. He wasn't siding with him. He was scared. Scared of losing both sons. Scared of the public impact. Scared of the consequences. And that's when the secretary said the line that changed everything. "The king is asking you to stand down." Harry's knees nearly buckled. Stand down. Was he a soldier again? Was he being commanded? Was he being handled? He felt humiliated, yet also strangely concerned. He whispered, "What's happening with him?" The private secretary paused, then said, "That is not my place to say. But I need you to hear me. Sir, this is not the time for confrontation." Harry's breathing grew shallow, because the one implication he couldn't shake, the implication that chilled him, was this. Was Charles's health worse than he realized? But before he could ask again, before he could push for details, before he could extract a truth the palace clearly wasn't ready to reveal, the private secretary added something else. Something that made Meghan's eyebrows shoot up when Harry repeated it later. Something that confirmed Kate's warning from Chapter 3. He said, "Your brother's refusal was strategic, but it was also protective." Protective? Harry almost laughed. Protective? From what? Protective of who? Harry demanded. The secretary answered, "Protective of you." Harry froze. Protective of him? Harry shook his head violently. What is that supposed to mean? But before the private secretary could explain, a second line beeped. Another incoming call. Harry looked at the screen. His heart stopped, because the new caller ID read, "Prince of Wales, incoming." William was calling. Directly. Now. Immediately. And whatever he was about to say would change everything. What do you do when the person who just rejected you, the person who just humiliated you, silenced you, shut you out, warned you, commanded you, suddenly decides to call you directly? What do you do when the brother who said, "Not happening, not now," is suddenly on the other line, ready to speak, ready to confront, ready to force a moment that should have happened years ago, but never did? Because that is exactly the moment Harry found himself in. One call from the king's private secretary was shocking enough. But two calls, back to back, one warning him, one demanding him. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't timing. This wasn't an accident. This was a coordinated response. A coordinated royal intervention. William was calling, and he expected an answer. Harry stared at his phone, stunned, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his palms. Meghan looked at him, frozen in place, her expression a mixture of fear, confusion, and calculation. Because she knew, she absolutely knew, that this was the moment William had been waiting for. Not a message, not a statement, not communication filtered through staff. A direct confrontation, the kind that could explode instantly. But here's the twist. Harry didn't feel fear. Not anymore. The humiliation from William's earlier messages had already burned that emotion right out of him. What he felt now was something far more dangerous. Resolve. He looked at the first call, the king's private secretary still on the line. Then at the second line, William calling directly. Two different worlds. Two different pressures. Two different futures. And Harry had to choose which line to answer. "Harry," the private secretary said quietly, "I advise you not to." But Harry didn't let him finish. He switched lines. He answered William, but not politely. "What do you want?" Harry snapped, his voice dripping with fury. There was a moment of silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. The kind of silence that happens when two people who share blood suddenly realize they no longer share trust. And then William's voice came through. Calm. Controlled. Cold. "We need to talk, Harry." Harry scoffed. "No kidding. After the messages you sent me? After telling me to stop? After shutting me out? Yeah, we need to talk." Another silence. But this one felt different. Not hesitation. Not intimidation. Something else. Something that made Harry suddenly uneasy. And then William said something that caught Harry completely off guard. "Before you say anything else, put your phone on speaker." Harry blinked. "Why?" "Because this is not a conversation you should have alone." Harry frowned. "I'm not alone." William exhaled sharply. "I know Meghan is there," he said bluntly. "That's not who I meant." Harry's grip tightened. If William wasn't talking about Meghan, who was he talking about? Harry felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Who else is listening on your end?" Harry demanded. William didn't pause. "Someone who needs to hear this as much as you." Harry's pulse spiked. "Who?" And William answered with a name Harry did not expect. "The King." Harry's throat went dry. "What?" Then he heard it. In the background, a soft cough, a chair shifting, a quiet rustle. The unmistakable signs of someone sitting very close to William during the call. Charles was there, listening, Present. Silent. Harry staggered back a step, one hand on the kitchen island to steady himself. Because if Charles, the King of England, was listening to the call, this wasn't a brotherly confrontation. This was an intervention. A royal intervention. Harry whispered, almost to himself. What is happening? William's voice grew sharper. Put the phone on speaker, Harry. Meghan watched Harry carefully. Her eyes narrowed. Not in fear, in calculation. Because she knew this wasn't just about the balcony anymore. This wasn't about Christmas Day. This wasn't about a symbolic appearance. This was bigger, deeper, darker. Harry slowly pressed the speaker button. Fine, he said. You have 2 minutes. Say what you need to say. William didn't speak first. Charles did. Harry. Just one word. Just his name. But it hit harder than any line William had delivered all day. Harry closed his eyes, swaying slightly, as if the sound of his father's voice had knocked the breath out of him. Are you both in the room? Harry whispered. Yes, William said. We are. Harry swallowed hard. This was not normal. This was not routine. This was not casual. This was a crisis meeting, disguised as a family call. But then Charles's voice returned, soft, strained, carrying something Harry had not heard from him in years. Fear. Harry, please listen to us. Harry felt something twist in his chest. Because Charles never said please. Not as king. Not as a father. Not even when begging for peace. Harry steadied himself. What is going on? He demanded. A long silence followed. William spoke first. We're dealing with something internally. Something significant. And your message, and your reaction, could make it worse. Harry's breathing quickened. What internal issue? Someone tell me what's going on. Charles cleared his throat. It's not something I can say over the phone. Not yet. Harry felt himself boiling again. Oh, of course. Secrets. Silence. Hiding things from me, even now. Harry. No. No, don't harry me, he snapped. You call me at the exact moment I'm about to respond to William's message, and suddenly you're both on the line telling me to stop? Why? Why now? Why today? What aren't you telling me? Silence. Then William said, You're being watched. Harry froze. Meghan inhaled sharply. Explain, Harry said quietly, dangerously. William continued. Every move you make. Every call. Every message. Every public appearance. Every conversation with the press. Harry blinked. What are you talking about? Charles's voice returned, low and weighted. There are people monitoring the situation. People who want to exploit you. People who want to exploit us. People who want to use the tension between you and your brother to destabilize the institution. Harry shook his head. Who? The press? Politicians? Staff? William cut him off. Everyone. That word, everyone, sent a shockwave through Harry's system. But William wasn't finished. And if you sent the message you were about to send, it would have ended everything. Harry felt his throat tighten. Ended what? He whispered. Ended the monarchy? William paused. No. Ended us. Harry's mouth fell open. Because William wasn't speaking publicly. He wasn't speaking strategically. He wasn't speaking politically. He was speaking personally. He was saying something Harry hadn't expected. Something that cracked through the cold exterior. If you had sent that message, William said softly, there would have been no coming back. Harry felt tears sting his eyes. For the first time, it hit him. William didn't want to lose him, but he didn't know how to keep him either. Harry wiped his face. So that's what this is? Harry whispered. An intervention? No. Charles said gently. A warning. A warning about what? Harry snapped. Charles sighed deeply. The kind of sigh that carries years of exhaustion, pain, and pressure. Harry, something is happening with the future of the monarchy. Something your brother is preparing for. Something we need stability for. Something we can't risk falling apart because of internal conflict. Harry felt a wave of fear wash over him. Is this about your health? He whispered. Another silence. Longer. Heavier. Then Charles said quietly. You need to come home, Harry. Harry's heart nearly stopped. Meghan's eyes widened. Come home, Harry whispered, his voice cracking. For Christmas? No, Charles replied softly. For something much more important. Harry gripped the counter, breathless. What's happening? He begged. Dad, what is happening? Charles inhaled sharply. But before he could answer, the call beeped. Another incoming call. From a number Harry recognized instantly. A number that made his stomach drop. The Lord Chamberlain. Incoming. the highest-ranking official in the royal household, the overseer of transitions, the coordinator of ceremonial shifts, the man who prepares for national announcements. Harry's body went cold, because the Lord Chamberlain only calls when something historic is about to happen. He looked at Meghan. She grabbed his arm. She whispered, "Harry, answer it." But Harry's thumb hovered. His father on one line, William beside him, the Lord Chamberlain calling in. This wasn't coincidence. This was the moment everything changed. And what Harry was about to hear next would shake him to his core.